here now, and a little early, I guess, like 5 minutes early, but that's okay because we can manage that. There's a few people here that are a little early that are ready. Anton G is here. He gives us a smile, which that's great. We have something witty. Dome Jen says hi everyone. Tim Barnes, hello everyone. Anton, hola amigos, says Maria. Jeff Poole is here. Hi Sam. Hey man, how's it going? And this person says hi Sam. I don't read Chinese, but maybe it's time to try. Speak English. Chio Valencia, hi. Praveen, namaskar. Jill, hi Sam, woohoo, thank you in advance. There we go. All right. Hi everybody. Tim. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the I'm going to be talking about the Mars in Leo and what we can expect from that transit and how things have shifted a little bit. Just wanted to do this update here to sort of align, with some of the recent shifts. Of course, it's also the full moon day today. As you can see, this is what time do we have here? This is 8:14. Yeah, this would be later tonight because this is like 7:30. But so we're experiencing this full moon in Capricorn, but we have the let's see here. Yeah, just get this together. So we're having these shifts now where Mars is now in Leo and Jupiter is no longer moving backwards. So today I'm going to talk about Mars in Leo, and then I'm going to talk about Jupiter moving direct as well. But this Mars in Leo, it just entered, if we go back a few days, oops, do this, okay. So you see it just entered Leo on the 8th. So August 8th, Mars entered Leo, about a week ago. But of course, the first day or so, it's less than 1 degree. So we didn't really start to feel it till maybe the 10th or so, which was over the weekend. That's when we really started to feel that Mars in Leo feeling, more powerful. And as you see, it'll be there. You watch the degrees. It'll be there it's about a month and a half. So we'll take it up through the end here. Yeah, till about September 23rd. So like August 10th till September 23rd. So that's like 40 days or so, right? And so, this placement is quite a strong one because, of course, we're going to have this sort of alliance with Leo being the sign of royalty and like the king and the power, and Mars being like the army or the general that is looking to defend something, right? Looking to defend something, and especially defend what we know is right and defend what we think is powerful. And hopefully the thing that it's defending is actually powerful, is actually righteous, is actually worthy. We always think it's worthy. We always think our battles are worth it. We always think our fights and struggles are virtuous and righteous. That's just the nature of fighting and battling in Mars. But it's not usually right. It's usually something that's emotional, or maybe something that's just to preserve our comfort zone, or some idea, some opinion, some idea that we think is right, even if it's not right. We think it's right, so we start to defend it. And again, often It's just somebody saying we're wrong, somebody disagreeing with an idea we have. Somebody disagrees with an idea we have, and immediately Mars comes out to defend it. That's probably the lowest level of Mars, and in many ways the most common and most disruptive, because then it's just an argument. And somebody disagrees with our idea. Again, ideas, the way we're supposed to handle that is actually listen to what they say and consider it. That's the nature of, for example, Mercury, which has to do with ideas. Somebody disagrees with my idea, I'm going to listen to what they say, because maybe they're right. They might be right. And Mercury is the energy that says, okay, well, let me hear what you have to say. Let me listen to your idea. Again, Mercury, listen. It's not just talking, it's listening. Communication is both ways, listening and talking. So when Mercury's powerful, we actually listen to other people's ideas. When it's not, and Mars is too strong, you disagree with me, I'm going to instantly just defend my idea. Just going to defend my opinion, defend it. A waste of Mars energy. Because ultimately, Mars is the power that we have in the moment, like every day. You woke up this morning with a certain amount of willpower. Mars is really this thing called willpower. Think about it. Think about, again, we might say energy. You know, our overall energy in the body is related to the sun. That's the overall energy. Like certain people have a lot of energy, and you'll see they often have like a strong sun. Again, ruling planet. There's a lot of ways to show it. But the sun is the general kind of vitality in someone's body. But our sort of day-to-day energy, especially that's focused on, again, showing up and fighting the battles in life. Because let's face it, there's a certain quality of life that's a battle. We wake up, we got to put on a certain armor and get ready to go out there and focus our energy on something. Focus our energy on this, not that. Focus our energy on this thing, not that thing. Again, this is very Mars in nature. Mars is very black and white. This is right, this is wrong. Again, this is why we can get into arguments with Mars. I'm right, and you're saying I'm wrong. I'm going to defend what I think is right. This is how Mars can be. Again, this is the wrong nature of Mars, is to defend our ideas. Instead, when Mars is most powerful, we figure out, we find the thing that's righteous. Again, when I say right, I don't necessarily even mean an idea. Ideas are fluid. Ideas can be right in almost any context. Again, this is why Mercury is so important in understanding and comprehending and getting along. Because what's more important with Mercury, for example, and even with ideas, is not to be right and not to try to prove that your idea is right. Sometimes it is, especially if it's for a larger cause. But the real power of Mercury and with communication is being able to see the context of every idea. See ideas in context. Again, you can see this, like, for example, as it relates to astrology. Like, I don't practice Western astrology, but that doesn't mean I think it's wrong. I don't practice every astrological technique. That doesn't mean I think they're wrong. It means I don't practice them. Now, that doesn't also mean that I think they're all right. What I'm going to do instead is listen to what the person says and listen to the context through which they're using it. And even if I don't practice it that way, I'm going to learn a lot just listening to them if they're using it correctly. I'm going to evaluate their ideas based on their ideas. I'm not going to judge their ideas as wrong simply because I don't use them. For example, this is the way ideas work, which is Mercury. And this is where people get into problem, even arguing about like zodiac systems or astrology systems. Again, I know that all astrology systems work. I also know that all zodiacs work. That doesn't mean they all work in all contexts. And that doesn't mean that everything anyone would say about it is right, because each idea is separate. Again, this is the larger context of ideas. And when people get into battle over ideas, for example, and get into arguments over ideas, it's because they've lost context of what's being said or whatever. And again, I don't mean to turn this into something about zodiacs or whatever, but I'm just talking about, this is how it's very easy to be open-minded. Like people can say, when you're even talking about astrology, well, how can Western astrology be right? How can they both be right? Well, they can both be right because they're both part of a different system and a different context. It's like saying, how can Western medicine and Eastern medicine both be right? Well, because they're both part of a different context, a different system. So what I'm saying is that's the realm of ideas. I'm talking about this because this is how Mars often goes to battle to our detriment. And we waste our energy. We waste that willpower that we get. We only get so much of it every day. We only get so much of it. And what it's good for is doing the right thing, the thing that we know is right, and putting it into action. Action, that's what Mars is. It's the actions. And you can tell by a person's actions how righteous they are and how much they're walking the talk. Again, someone can say a bunch of stuff, let's say about how open-minded they are, or how intelligent they are, or how spiritual they are, but then what are they doing? Are they actually practicing those things? Are they actually showing tolerance? Are they actually putting those things into practice, or is it just ideas, for example? So Mars is big with those kinds of things, walking the talk. And so Mars winds up showing how much integrity is behind our actions, because it's how we're aligning our willpower. We only get so much of it, and we need to be disciplined. We need to not waste our energy, literally waste our energy, our day-to-day willpower, and focus on things that are useless. That includes arguing with people that aren't worth arguing with, getting into situations that aren't worth getting into, just defending our comfort zone and working hard to just preserve something that's eventually going to decay and die, for example. So eventually Mars becomes like the spiritual warrior, because life is a war. It's a battle. It's a battle over good versus evil in here, not out there. In here. The battle is going on within you. And so based on your teachings and those things that are right, righteousness, I'm not talking about correct ideas. I'm talking about what's right, what we know to be right, that we're spiritual beings, that we need to aspire toward these higher virtues, Sattwic qualities of goodness, of sharing, of high-mindedness. All of those things are related to Leo. This is why Mars in Leo is so powerful, because it elevates that fighting nature of Mars, which wants to destroy the thing that's weak. It's a destructive energy. Mars is here to destroy what we think is weak. That's why we get into arguments, because we perceive that someone's trying to destroy us and our opinions and our ideas. So rather than let them destroy our ideas, we're going to destroy theirs. Mars is destruction. It's destroying something. But what it's supposed to be destroying is your own ignorance. It's supposed to be destroying your own ignorance, not your opponents or what have you. And so when Mars is in Leo, there's an alliance with this self-will and this need to destroy what's making us weak, with this high-mindedness and this true power, the true power of the kingdom. Now, again, it can be just fighting to preserve our limited power and all like that. It can definitely also get pulled down into the mud. But you'll see when someone has Mars in Leo, they always feel like they're fighting the righteous battle. It might not be a righteous battle, but to them it feels like that. And if someone is spiritual and someone is aligned with higher teachings and whatnot, Mars in Leo is a great benefit to helping them fight the good fight, because the nature of Leo uplifts Mars, and it puts that quality of, the courage to go through the battles and struggles, because Mars also gives us the capacity to endure the hardship of war, because war is hell, and it's not fun to get in there and fight. But if it's worth it, and if the cause is just, then it's worth it. Now, of course, that can translate into the battles of life as well, but also, again, your own salvation, which is where I like to talk as well, because everything is happening internally. In the Bhagavad Gita, it takes place on the battlefield. for a reason, right? That's not just a coincidence, because we're on the battlefield. And this shows that sort of righteous warrior energy. So showing up every day to fight the good fight is a big part of what Mars in Leo can really bring. Hang on a second. I forgot my drink. So that's where we start with this, is to really understand that you get so much energy, it needs to be aligned with a righteous cause. And this elevates the nature of the battle. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna thought that his real battle was with that army of people, and he was in an enormous crisis because he didn't want to kill all those people on the battlefield. But Lord Krishna says, look, your problem is you don't understand the nature of life. You're suffering in ignorance and darkness. You think you're this limited being, and you're too caught up in all the politics of this whole thing. You're just a servant. You're just a vessel. You're just an instrument in the hands of the divine, in the hands of God. So fight and do the righteous cause, and realize that no one is killed, just like the soul, just like the body changes clothes at the beginning of each day, the soul changes bodies in between lives, and understand that this is all karma. And your problem is that you don't understand the nature of reality. So Lord Krishna doesn't fool around. He just comes out and says the truth. And this is what we need to remember. When we remember that, our consciousness elevates, and then all of the fights of the world and all the battles and struggles of the world have a higher context, right? And so this is a big part of what's going on right now, is we can really see this higher context to all the battles that we might be involved in right now. And it's really a great time to, as Heather says, choose your battles wisely. She also says we can control two things: our attitude and our reaction, blessings of healing, love, and light. So yes. And again, the thing that controls our attitude is something else. You know, a lot of things have to do with our attitude, especially the more gentle planets. Mars has to do with our reaction, though, because Mars is our reaction. That's why I wanted to show that comment. That reaction in the moment is Mars. Again, think of that. Think of how we all have a reaction. We're prone to a reaction that can want to destroy and lash out and lose our temper. That's Mars. And that's literally the energy that could also kill somebody to protect ourselves. Fight to the death, that brutal animal that's inside. That's our reaction. And again, when it's the reason Mars is debilitated in Cancer is because Cancer is the emotions, which are very much on the surface. And when Mars is in Cancer, we're prone to that kind of even perhaps violent emotional reaction, or not having any reaction at all and then just kind of suppressing. But in general, that frustration will be there. So that reaction, though, once we become disciplined, we then channel that aggression toward what we know is right, which are things like yoga and spiritual practice. And again, enduring the hardship and the battle, because these cruel planets like Mars and Saturn give us the capacity to endure the hardship of spiritual growth. And the thing that's the hardest is taking on the psychological problems and challenges of our own shortcomings. And I want you to understand that the easiest thing to do is to just dump it and lash out at other people. And this is what Mars and Saturn energy generally does. The real pain of spiritual transformation, there's a lot of it, but you know, it's hard to be disciplined, and Mars gives us the discipline to do what we know is right, like I just said, to do what we know is right. not argue about it with other people, not argue with them, but to do what we know is right. Again, get up a little bit early, do our meditation, eat the right foods, move our body in a way that moves energy into higher consciousness, things like yoga or other kinds of ways. We know this is right. We all know it's right. And we never do it because it's hard to do it. And the main thing that's hard to do is to control those reactions, like it said. The hardest thing to do is that when someone triggers us and pushes our buttons, that instead of fighting with them and having that heat of anger thrust onto them, the hardest thing is to keep it to ourselves and use that anger and that fire to transform and destroy our own weakness, not dump it on the other person and try to destroy them. So these tamasic planets, Mars and Saturn, are the energies we need to keep. We need to hold on to it ourselves. When you get angry and triggered, what you're supposed to do is keep that to yourself, but you don't. You dump it on somebody because you can't hold it. It's too hot. It's easier to just vent and dump it on somebody, right? And we know that's wrong. But again, so this is the thing. We all know it's right. We just don't do it. We all know we're not supposed to do that, but we do it anyway because it's hard. It's hard to do the right thing. Again, when Mars is in Leo, because Leo is a Sattvic sign, it elevates and brings more awareness. And because it's in this sign that's trying to do something higher, because Mars is in this sign that's trying to do something higher, when we make those mistakes with it, we see it and we see our mistakes and we say, I really screwed up my own vision and my own purpose because of my anger and my shortcomings. It doesn't mean we don't do it. It means that when we do it, we screw up our purpose because Mars in Leo wants to be aligned with a higher purpose. And oftentimes that will make us correct our course. And notice that we're the ones that are screwing ourselves up and that's undermining our own purpose and our own vision. So Amy says, hey, Sam, thanks for sharing the light. You're welcome, Amy. It's good to see you here. And yes, this is the great teachings. These are the great teachings. And Cosmos Forever says, very true and apt to the present scenario. Yes. So the great lesson right now is for you to see your own shortcomings and your own anger management problems. I don't know if you saw recently, there's a newsman named Chris Cuomo. Hang on a second. We'll type his name here. Chris Cuomo. If you Google Chris Cuomo anger meltdown or something, you'll see this video where he just recently totally lost it. I mean, he like flipped out on some guy. He's been on TV for a long time. And, you know, he's pretty affable guy. I mean, he's usually pretty joking around. I mean, you can tell he's got a bit of an edge, but he really went off. And you could just see him just totally triggered and threatening to beat this guy up and all this. Exactly the stuff I said. Mars has been very, very weak for the last several months. But again, it happened over the weekend, like right when Mars first went in to Leo over the weekend. And I think it was Saturday or Sunday. And he's like threatening to beat the guy up and he's all this stuff over nothing. The guy called him Fredo, which is just a mild little jeering little insult, like from The Godfather or something, like he's the weak brother. Anyway, it was just a silly little comment and the dude flipped out. But anyway, it's very easy to be triggered right now because Mars has been saving it up, like I said, saving it up to getting ready for the fight. And now we can get triggered. And I'm sure that Cuomo regrets it, even on his Twitter, because I'm looking at it because, of course, this is something that I talked about. And I was surprised, and I'm always looking at the news or whatever to see what's going to show it. And again, you can see he went to Twitter and said, you know, this was my mistake. Even though a lot of people were encouraging him, saying, saying, hey, man, we totally understand why these people were trying to bait him, which they were. They were just trying to make a viral moment happen. So somebody pulled out their phone as soon as he got upset. And he even said, again, because he's got a lot of introspection, I think he's a smart guy. He just lost his temper. And I also know that he's involved with martial arts. And he's on TV, so he has a platform. So he has a higher cause. And he realized that his anger, his Mars expression, hurt his platform. And he said, yeah, I understand, but I shouldn't be acting this way. It doesn't help me or help anything to be carrying on like this. So again, this is the kind of self-corrective process that can happen when Mars goes through Leo. And as I already said, Mars will be in Leo till the middle of September. So again, this is a time when you can be looking at what frustrates you, what makes you angry, what makes you irritable, and really bring greater humility to it and greater self-examination. Shivani said, this has been a lesson since Mars entered Leo. Respond, don't react or waste your energy. Yeah, but the real power in it, though, too, is to be aligned with purpose. Because, again, Mars is that self-will, that willpower, that authentic willpower that is enthusiastic. You get in there and fight. Fight the good fight. Fight doesn't mean fight another person. It means fight for the thing you love, not against the thing. Don't fight to destroy the thing that you think is holding you back. It means fight for what you want, right? Like I'm doing it now. I'm fighting for you guys. I'm fighting to teach something. Like this takes energy. It takes enthusiasm and passion, and I'm showing here to fight for this. Rather, I could show up and fight against a bunch of people if I want. God knows. So fight for, and again, even if it's not a fight, you can see this energy of Mars, which you're always fighting either for the thing that you're trying to create, fighting for the world you want to create, and at the same time fighting against your negative tendencies, fighting against your stuckness, fighting against your insecurity, fighting against the thing that's holding you back, fighting against your lack of confidence. So again, Mars in Leo is already aligned with that higher purpose, that righteous cause. And when we screw up, it's a great time to notice that we're the ones screwing it up. I use the example of the Chris Cuomo because he could have come out and just doubled down and tripled down and said, look, these people were idiots and they deserve what they got and blah, blah. And he didn't. And I had a feeling he wouldn't, because you can tell he's a pretty, for news people or whatever, he's a pretty introspective guy. And he's like, look, I appreciate people encouraging me and saying it wasn't my fault, but I let myself down. I shouldn't have acted like that, regardless of what they did. We all know better just because we're wasting our energy on it. So that's a big thing right now, this transformation of our anger and frustration into discipline, because it's the same energy. Like I said, it's the same energy. The reason you feel weak is because you're not disciplined and you're not courageous enough to destroy your own weakness that needs to be destroyed in order for you to go to the next level. And that whole thing revolves around being disciplined and doing what you know is right. Doing what you know is right. Being able to endure the slings and arrows that come your way, because as soon as you also step up, then people start shooting at you as well. But even in your day-to-day life, we all know we should get up a little earlier. We should do some meditation. We should do those things to make ourselves emotionally and spiritually strong. But they're hard. It's hard to do. It's easier to just be lazy and enjoy life, which are Venus qualities. Planets also have this natural opposite. There's a natural opposite and tension between Mars and Venus. Again, Mars is the discipline to sacrifice what's making us happy in the moment. I want to sleep longer. I want to eat food that tastes good. I want to eat a lot of it. I want to sit around and enjoy life. That's Venus. Opposite that is Mars, which says, get your ass out of bed early. Do the things you know that are right. Eat the food that makes you strong, not that just tastes good. Eventually, we find a happy medium, right? Instead of getting up at 3 a.m. like a lunatic every morning. Now, if you do, that's fine. Instead of getting up that early and being like a total maniac about it, just get up a half hour early and do a meditation. And then maybe eventually you realize as it makes you stronger, you might start getting up a half hour earlier than that. And you might start gradually increasing over time. But the reason you would then do it is because you see how this sacrifice and this tapas, in yoga, it's called tapas, which is sacrificing certain pleasures to make yourself strong. Eat a little less food. It doesn't mean you have to starve yourself or go on a starvation diet. Eat a little less food. Use less garnishing. Have it be a little more bland. And see what happens. See how much more energy you have. Right? So again, doing what we know is right. The reason we don't is because it's hard. Again, Mars, these cruel planets give us the capacity to do what's hard and like it and enjoy it. And the reason we enjoy it is because we enjoy being strong. We enjoy the strength part of it. We might not enjoy the sacrifice in the moment, but again, it gives us the capacity to sacrifice in the moment for what we know is right. We all want to sleep a little longer at times. But how good does it feel when you get up out of bed and you're like, no, I'm strong enough to do that? That Mars gives you that power that enjoys the battle and the struggle and winning and the strength that comes, right? So these are important things to pay attention to right now. So a few comments. Shiva Kami says we have to sharpen ourselves rather than blame each other, especially in our relationships, in love and family or in work. Yes. And know that we're the source of everything. Every frustration that we have with other people is some projection of what's in us. Don't shoot yourself in the foot, people. Right. And so David said, so I should start walking to work. You know, this is a good example of something to do. Some more exercise. And again, what walking does, you know, getting your body moving and getting energy and prana flowing through your body into your higher consciousness and dimension. And again, one of the things about Mars and Leo is because it's fiery, it's creating that. Just like I said with the Chris Cuomo, because Mars, again, is fiery, it goes into Leo, which is fiery, so there's more fire. So there's more of a tendency, as I said, to be ready to look for trouble a little bit because he's been weak, at least in these other elements. He's been in the fire, or he's been in the earth, air, and water element for several months. Now we're ready to like bust out. And again, if we're not aware, we're looking at other people as being the reason I haven't been able to bust out. I haven't been able to bust out because of you. So we're ready to fight. So instead of doing that, again, more physical activity, moving energy and prana through our body and into our mind and higher dimensions. So there's other questions which I'm not going to really get to at this point. I might a little bit, but so I'm going to talk about even through the nakshatras here. So, you know, Mars is in Magha, and it'll be in Magha Nakshatra until, well, it's until the 27th. It's in Magha. So Magha, you know, this first part of Mars is ruled by the Pitris, the divine ancestors. And this is kind of like the real kind of archetype of Leo, the king on the throne, Magha, the royalty, right? It's called Regulus in Western astronomy. And it's very much about that falling back on our teachings and our teachers and defending those mighty teachings that have made us who we are. They come from our childhood. They come from our past as we become spiritual people, especially involved with yoga and spiritual practices and things like that. Magha shows the divine ancestors that brought us the teachings that we should be putting into practice. Mahina says exercise will help to reduce the anger and stress, but being aware is key. You know, one of the great things that I learned to do years ago, and I still do it, I take walks. You know, I take long walks often. You know, I'm blessed to be living in San Diego now near the beach. Even when I lived in San Francisco, I would take a lot of long walks. But now I live near the beach. And, you know, you can do a walk meditation and time your mantra to the steps. Like, for example, if you could say Om Namah Shivaya in your mind as you're walking and breathing. And it happens naturally. Like your rhythm will self-automate with your breath. So like I would say Om Namah Shivaya, and it would take 8 breaths. It would be on the in-breath. I would feel Om Namah Shivaya with 8 steps, 1 in-breath, and then 1 exhale. Om Namah Shivaya, 8 steps, exhale. And something happens when you introduce something like a mantra into walking. Everything then takes on a rhythm. The rhythm of life is always there. We're just always out of step with rhythm. You're always breathing. You're just breathing unconsciously. You're literally right now breathing and you're not conscious of it. One of the easiest meditations is to become conscious of your breathing. One of the easiest ways to do that too is to then connect it with a mantra. You could even say Om Namah on the inhale and Shivaya on the exhale. Or Om Namah Shivaya on the inhale, Om Namah Shivaya on the exhale. Any mantra. I'm just using that one as an example. And immediately what happens is you become more present. You become more conscious, or conscious at all. Most people are totally unconscious of everything that's happening. They're not present. We're just going through our life mechanically in our head, in our intellect. So this is why the simplest spiritual practice in the world is remember your mantra. You see it everywhere when you go to ashrams. Remember your mantra. Remember your mantra. It doesn't mean remember your mantra when you sit down and meditate. It means remember your mantra every moment of your life and connect it with your breath. Your breath becomes a mantra. Your breath then becomes Om Namah Shivaya. It's not even like it's separate, for example, or whatever your mantra is. So these kinds of things just are very powerful as a spiritual practice. So a walking meditation is a great thing to do right now. And of course, this also happens when you're doing yoga. This is why yoga is a breathing exercise. It's actually a pranayama. Yoga and pranayama are the same thing if it's the right kind of yoga. I was trained at Shivananda. I did Shivananda yoga. I was trained as a Shivananda yoga teacher in 2001, long time ago, at the Shivananda ashrams. And in classical hatha yoga, yoga is not just physical postures, it's pranayama at the same time. Every posture is inhale, the arms up, exhale forward, inhale up, exhale back, inhale up, exhale back, inhale, exhale. It's a moving meditation where breath and body are connected. By the way, that's what yoga means. It's connecting body and breath, your limited mind with the cosmic mind. And if you're not doing these things in your life, honestly, if you're not doing something like this in your life, I'm going to just whack you in the head right now and say, you're really not spiritual. You might believe in things, but it's not spirituality, because spirituality are practices. Spirituality is not beliefs. It's not a religion. If that's a religion, you might believe things, and that's fine. That's religion. We all believe something, and you have a belief. Maybe your belief revolves around astrology and the universe and all, and that's great. That's fine. But it's not spirituality until you're doing practices. If you're not practicing something, some kind of meditation, some kind of something where you're connecting your limited life with the cosmic universal life and rhythm, you're not spiritual yet. You're not doing spiritual practices. And again, it's not an opinion. This is just what spirituality is. And when you've been trained, done spiritual practices and spiritual trainings, you know the difference. It's not a judgment. And again, notice if I'm saying this and you're getting, angry at me, like, because people get angry at me for saying this. I can trigger people a lot because I say this stuff that's true. And again, notice maybe your Mars is right now, oh, you're judgmental, you're this and that. I get it all the time. Again, I even said at the beginning, what happens when we hear ideas that we don't like? first thing we would do is get mad and want to argue about it. Instead of going, is he right? Maybe he's right. Maybe these are just a bunch of ideas and I'm not really practicing anything. Maybe that's why nothing really changes very much in my life. And I'm utterly confused as to why in my life and in my mind, I'm spiritual, but nothing changes. Why doesn't spirituality work? I'm spiritual, but nothing changes. Maybe because you're not spiritual. You're not doing spiritual practices. So again, it has to be some kind of spiritual practice. That's all I'm saying. Something to do with the breath and the body. And I'm telling you something right here now that actually, if you're not doing things that are spiritual, this is something that could revolutionize your life. Taking a walk and connecting your walk to mantra and breath. Automatically, you open up something that's just amazing if you've never experienced it before. All of a sudden, you're flowing, and it's intentional. It's not just happening somehow. You're engineering that. You're creating it. It's a spiritual discipline and a spiritual practice that you are creating. You're not just somehow had some epiphany. You know, when you do spiritual practices, you have epiphanies all the time. You know, like I talk to people and they're like, what happened that day? I was walking and I just had this epiphany and I just sensed it all. It's like, right, I get it. It happens. It'll happen to you throughout life. But when you're doing spiritual practices all the time, every day there are epiphanies. Moments after moment. It's nothing but epiphanies all the time. Just life is an epiphany. It constantly happens when you're engineering and cultivating the consciousness and awareness through those practices. Because all you're doing when you're doing spiritual practice is you're creating the receptive consciousness so that the cosmic wisdom that's already there can get through your thick head. Because we got this big thick head full of ideas that blocks off, that cuts us off from the greater flow of consciousness. So when we do spiritual practice, that starts to thin out. And all of that chatter thins out so that we actually get glimpses of that epiphany. It's like little breaks in the clouds. Right now, we're just cloudy. It's like it's a cloudy day. And all those clouds are obscuring the sun. In fact, we've never even seen the sun before. And spiritual practices start to burn off a little bit of the cloud. So once in a while, a shaft of light shines through the clouds, and we call that an epiphany. And it'll just happen just naturally because we're alive. It'll happen once in a while. Happens sometimes. So again, I'm talking about this because Mars in Magha Nakshatra is a time for you to really connect with pure teachings. And I'm saying pure teachings because it's Leo, a Sattvic sign. And again, just to make sure you know, sidereal zodiac, totally aligned with nakshatras and rashis, right? And so the first section of Leo is Magha Nakshatra to 13 degrees and 20 minutes. And it's those pure teachings that take you straight to the truth. As Amy said, yoga changed my entire life. Night and day difference. It's magical, right? All yoga is doing and spiritual practices do, again, it's like they just start to thin out a lot of those clouds that are in your mind. And those clouds are there giving you this idea that you're this person and that this is who you really are. And it starts to thin them out and you start having insights. And your consciousness just begins to expand. So then after the 28th, so let me go back here to this. So again, it's in Magha Nakshatra until August 28th, right? August 28th, and then it goes into Purva Falguni, the 29th until so from the 29th until September 19th. So for those like 20 days or 30, I can't add 20 days. So from the 29th until the 19th, right? So Purva Falguni is a nakshatra. It's ruled by the god Kamadeva or Bhagha, the god of delight. So again, there's a progression through Leo. First, we imbibe those great teachings of the Pitris, of the divine ancestors. Mars in that nakshatra is fighting to defend and to put into place those great teachings. Again, it's not just believing in it or thinking that we're spiritual. It's doing the practices that the teachers have given us. Mars, walking the talk of the divine ancestors and the Petries and the things that we believe. Those great teachings, we need to do them. After we do that, the next part of Leo is ruled by Bhagha, the god of delight. Life becomes much more joyous, much more beautiful, much more elevated. And what happens is we want to share it. This is that quality of Leo that is very generous, this generosity, which has to do with, like you can think of Leo as like a king, the generosity of the king. A good king is generous and takes all of that power and wisdom and benevolence and wants to share it with the kingdom because he's overflowing with joy and love and beauty. So Purva Falguni is that Nakshatra. It's that part. And you'll notice what happens is when we haven't risen and elevated, and we might say the bad king, what does the bad king want to do? He wants to take all the money and the pleasure and happiness and keep it for himself and take from everybody. Whereas the good king wants to give to everybody. This is the Nakshatra where we see, what are you doing with your power? How are you using your power? Are you using it to give and to share? Or are you using it to take from others? There are people who have Mars in Leo, and they're not on the more evolved end. And instead, they use their power to take from others and make themselves look powerful and spin all of that power back onto themselves. See how powerful I am, and get up and brag about how powerful they are and take other people's power for their own, quote, delight. But it's a very short-sighted game. So this is the quality of Leo. Again, you can think of the lazy king. I use the example of like the lazy king who is sitting around, eating grapes and fed by concubines. Like, yeah, I got power and wealth and money and I'll do what I want and I'm fat and lazy and taking advantage of everybody because I can. Again, it's a short-sighted game because there's this thing called karma. And you might be the king in this lifetime or the king this month, and next month you're not. And the next month you're a beggar, hoping that others will be generous with you. And so this is how we're meant to progress. And again, you can look at those dates to see, right now we're in the Mars in Magha, which is about taking your teachings or finding good teachings and putting them into practice so that your mind and consciousness can evolve and you can fight the good fight and aspire to the highest good. And then the next section is Purva Falguni, which relative to how much you've evolved and developed in this way, life becomes much more delightful and you want to share the power and you want to empower others. This is also the quality of Leo that's like very affectionate, and it is very much like about affection and hugging and all of that. My guru Amma has planets in Leo in Purva Falguni. She's got Mars Venus in Purva Falguni. I think they're both in Purva Falguni. I know they're both in Leo, and I think they're both Purva Falguni. And this is that section that's very affectionate. It can also be very stimulated with a lot of desires and sexuality and things like that. I don't judge those things at all, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of joy and beauty that comes in that realm as well. And family, this is the section of Leo also that has a lot to do with that part, because Leo can be very family oriented. Again, this also comes from Magha, which has to do with, with the king and the lineage and the family. Leo is a very family oriented sign because, again, family is a Sattvic thing, right? So this is that sort of delight in the family as well. Whereas Magha is like the power of the family and the legacy and the lineage and the inheritance and the entitlement of the king. The king isn't elected, it's his birthright. So that's the Magha part. The Purva Falguni part is the joy of sharing with the family and then extending the family in a very generous way to the world and to others, and just that whole kind of nature. Or again, saying our family is the powerful one, we're royalty, get on your knees, right? You can see that same possibility there. So that's through the 29th, or through the 18th rather, 18th, 19th of September. And then the last few days, it's in Uttar Falguni from the 19th, 20, 21, 22, 23. So from 19th to the 23rd, it's in Uttar Falguni, which is the last nakshatra in Leo. That has to do with taking that power of Leo and starting to organize that power into all of the different tasks and activities of Virgo. Because again, you want to look at these signs as not just being sitting somewhere, but Leo is the kind of that central power center. We can even look at it as like a government, but the government works well because it's able to delegate tasks and bureaucracies and do things in a Virgo way where all these tasks are performed correctly. Again, you can look at it in your life. Anything you want to accomplish in your life, you need to have a system or structure in place. Somebody has a business. Their business is only going to grow relative to how much structure and organization they have. Many people, like myself, for example, I have a business. And it only grows as much as I'm able to do myself, and then also delegate to other people that might help me with my work and business. So hiring and delegating. This is the last section of the Leo equation, how Leo becomes Virgo, how the kingdom becomes an efficiently well-run organization with tasks that are performed on time and correctly and things like that. So that last section of Mars, as it goes through Leo from the 19th to the 23rd, is more organizational, structural, and really kind of is the culmination and the ending of what Leo is about. We start with these high teachings and these high principles, which has to be the source. Then we put those into practices and they create a lot of wealth and abundance and delight and joy and opportunity that we can share or we can take, we can give and take. This whole feeling of growth and prosperity. That's the Purva Falguni, which also has to do with courtship and other things. But then as it finishes, all of that power, prosperity, abundance needs to be sort of transitioned into Virgo areas of life, which have to do with organization, details, precision, and things like that. So these are, this is that transit of Mars through Leo for the next month and a half or so. And I wanted to just pop in and update people about this. Quite a few comments here. And a lot of the comments are, they're just sort of conversational, and there's not a lot of questions that I need to answer here. If people do have questions, they could ask in the comments, and I can, maybe answer them in the comments later. But, I hope this was helpful. And if it was, share this with people, post it on your Facebook and your other places where you have social media, and let people know. I think this is helpful to really understand in great depth how this Mars and Leo can really benefit us now, and align your day-to-day actions and those daily battles that you're ready to show up and fight with a higher purpose, a higher noble cause. This is what really elevates Mars energy and gets you in there kind of like Arjuna, like the spiritual warrior, fighting the good fight, not triggered and getting into stupid arguments with people that aren't worth your time, or about ideas that other people just fail to grasp. Again, this is one of the things that I've had to work through in my life for sure, because I have a lot of ideas, being Gemini, and can be irritable. By the way, I also have Mars and Leo, so I know having to evolve these arguments, but so much of what happens is it's very easy to be tempted into arguing with people about ideas, especially when they don't understand the bigger picture. It's better to really not argue with them and just educate on that level, just connect the bigger ideas, and instead of argue with people that don't get it, you know, just bring the bigger context as well, and stay focused on what's important and not get, you know, distracted and diverted or even baited or tempted into arguing, because people will want to argue with you, like what happened with Chris Cuomo. Someone was baiting him. They did it because they were trying to get him to fight. And again, you'll see that people will try to bait you, especially people that are, I don't want to say beneath you, like they're lower than you, or like they're not a good person, but people who project power onto you, like somebody who is a nobody, quote, like that, like no one has heard of. Suddenly, this person who gets into an argument with Chris Cuomo has now been elevated. They like hijack your power as a way to make themselves feel powerful. These are all the kind of games that people play, especially in this world now. Again, in this sort of trolling culture, it's called trolling. And you think people that are powerful don't get trolled. They get trolled all the time. I can say we get trolled because there are people that troll me, not like I don't see myself as powerful, but others do at times. And they feel like they're accomplishing something because they're arguing with me, trying to get me to argue back with them. So again, it's something that I've had to learn to not handle and to not address or get into sort of battles with people that are just trolling. And again, I don't even take it personally at this point because I've been used to it now for so long, but it took me a while to get used to it. It takes a while to not get triggered. And I'm just telling you this because notice this. Notice how, again, when we get these moments like Mars going through Leo, these things show up. Other people are irritated, so they start trying to troll somebody they think is more powerful because they want to get a reaction. And maybe you're one of the people that is getting trolled. And again, or even if they're not trying to troll, maybe they just want to feel good by getting into a fight with you. And that's the temptation, is to not do it. And to again, Mars and Leo, there's an opportunity, a possibility to be above it. And I'm saying be above it without making the mistake first. I wish Chris Cuomo would have heard this first. I wish he would have seen my forecast of don't take the bait, because people are going to be baiting you. Don't take the bait and then regret it later and have to come out and apologize and wind up embarrassing yourself and looking like a fool. Last thing I'll say about Leo is this is one of those signs that can be very much about embarrassment. This is one of the biggest things that Leo people actually have to deal with in their life, because it's ruled by the sun, which is the mighty self. And the shadow side of that power is actually embarrassment, because we humiliate ourselves by abusing our power, by misusing our power. And by the way, I don't want to get into it, and some people have talked about it a lot, but look at the President of the United States and look at him and notice how much he embarrasses himself and makes himself look foolish. And notice how much he's aware of it. Of course, he never admits it, but he's obviously constantly insecure about looking foolish. And he's so easy to troll. He's the easiest person to troll and flatter because he's got a lot of these negative Leo and Sun traits. With an eclipsed Sun, he's a Leo ascendant. He's got Mars in the first. So you can see an example also of someone who is constantly trolling, constantly insecure, constantly taking the bait as well. Whether you like him or not, it's inescapable. You can just see it. So the higher quality of that is to be like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita and not take the bait and instead fight the good fight. So, okay, guys, I'm glad we got to talk here. And if you have some questions, you can ask them in the comments and I'll get to them.